Is Bungie ruining exotic armor in the Edge of Fate? Now, if you haven't been keeping up with the news, don't worry. In a recent twab from Bungie, they shed some light on the upcoming changes to stats debuting in the Edge of Fate alongside Armor 3.0. And at first glance, it appears like exotics will be a detriment to build crafting since they will only drop with a maximum of 63 in their stats. And if you've been playing Destiny for a while, you already know that anything under 65 is immediately shredded. Matter of fact, I would go as even far as to say anything under 67, I instantly shred. Now keep in mind, we're also going to be entering a new sandbox, where instead of being capped at 100 in each stat category, the maximum is now going to be 200, which is double the previous amounts. So again, we have to ask ourselves, is Bungie ruining exotics? As it turns out, the answer to that question has broad implications that should significantly affect what you're farming prior to the Edge of Fate. So let's start with what's actually changing. Stated in last week's TWAB, while your existing roles will be converted 1-to-1 to the new stats, new drops of exotic armor will be upgraded to Armor 3.0. This means they will have their stats determined by archetypes. They'll receive the new masterworking system and drop with full mod energy by default. Now, while these drops will not have a specific gear tier, their stats will roll as if they were tier 2, that being between 58 and 63 total stats. And once masterworked, this should be comparable to all but the very best Armor 2.0 rolls. All right, so first thing we need to know is that the stats on our exotics that you currently have are not changing. Now, they are transferring over in the Edge of Fate 1-to-1. So for instance, if I just give you a layout of a piece of exotic currently in Armor 2.0 and what that exotic armor piece is going to look like in Edge of Fate, it's literally the same stats, but with name changes. So some of the current stat categories we have now are being deprecated, but Bungie has already clarified which stats convert to what, and so that's essentially what you're going to be looking at in Edge of Fate here. Now, new exotic armor will inherit only some of the armor changes arriving in Edge of Fate, those being armor archetypes, masterworking, and full mod energy. However, unlike other gear, exotics will not be tiered, meaning they are unable to access some of the benefits that legendary Edge of Fate armor will receive, like stat tuning, 11 energy, and maximum possible stats. Now, already that sounds pretty frustrating, but I think the first question that comes up, just looking at your stats, will exotic armor be worse in Edge of Fate? As it turns out, if we're just purely looking at the maximum total value, get this, our current exotic armor is actually better. Right now, the max an exotic armor piece can roll is 68. Pre-Shadow Give exotics have +3 intrinsic stats, and they can roll up to 71. Now, this is excluded from calculations as it doesn't apply to all exotics, but after being masterworked and upgraded to Artifice, this is capped out at 83. Meanwhile, Edge of Fate exotics will roll with a max of 63 and will cap out at 78 after being fully masterworked. Now, granted, this is only a 5-stat difference. I know some of you are like, Cross, really? You're making that big of a deal out of this? You damn right I am. God damn it, fellas. I'm all about the Armor 3.0, the sandbox changes. But come on, man. Bungie, tier 5 exotic armor pieces. It would have been perfect. It would have made sense. But the best we're going to get is tier 2. And keep in mind, Edge of Fate is going to be abandoning the tier stat benefits in favor of linear scaling, which means that every stat will mean something. And most of us are going to be doing everything we can to get to 200 in multiple stats. Now, for the most part, unless you've gotten extremely lucky, your current exotic armor will be in line with the new gear. However, when we look at how stat distribution works between the two expansions, the answer becomes less clear. As mentioned earlier, right now, exotics can reach up to 83 stats after fully upgrading it, but there are limits on where these stats can go. Our 68 base stats are divided into 2 pools, one for the top 3 stats, that being mobility, resilience, and recovery, and one for the bottom 3 stats, that being discipline, intellect, and strength. Now, each of these pools receive 34 stat points distributed randomly across each category. Now, what this means is you won't encounter a situation where all of your points are spec'd into mobility and resilience, or intellect and strength. This doesn't keep you from reaching max 100 stats for categories that share the same pool. However, it does make it significantly more difficult. When you masterwork gear, you receive an extra 12 stats, that being 2 per category. And when you add an Artifice slot, you get an extra 3 stats into a category of your choice. Now, in the Edge of Fate, exotics can reach up to 78 stats after being fully upgraded. Stats are distributed based on the archetype of an armor set. Now, each piece of armor will only drop stats in 3 categories called primary, secondary, and tertiary. Now, the tertiary stat is random. The primary and secondary stats are determined by the armor piece archetype. Now, the 6 archetypes are Paragon, Grenadier, Specialist, Brawler, Bulwark, and and Gunner. And these are the primary and secondary stats associated with each of these. Then the number of stats given to the primary, secondary, and tertiary categories appears to be random. The maximum in each category for exotics was clarified by Bungie in the TWAB as well. Primary will be 30, secondary will be 20, and tertiary will be 13. Now, all of the categories will contain 0 stats, and once masterworked, +5 will be added into the 3 empty stats, that being 15 total, with artifice upgrades not being available. Now, exotic class items don't have stats currently, but once Edge of Fate launches, they will be assigned the maximum possible stats in 3 categories determined by their left and right column perks. Now, Bungie gave a few examples in the TWAB, where the top perks listed will determine the archetype of the armor piece, that being primary and secondary stats, and the bottom perk determines the tertiary stats. Now, hopefully before Edge of Fate launches, Bungie will provide a list of all perks and their corresponding archetypes. So with all of that in mind, the reality is that if you have a max stat exotic armor piece with extremely good spikes in the categories that you want, you can achieve better stats now than in Edge of Fate. However, exotic armor in the next expansion is going to be easier to focus and comparable, if not equal, to the majority of armor we currently have right now. Unfortunately, that's just part of the problem. You see, pre-Edge of Fate, legendary and exotic armor are equivalent stat-wise. And if you were to swap out a legendary for an exotic, as long as you have similar roles, you won't receive any penalties. However, after the update, once we unlock tier 5 gear, exotics will be substantially worse than legendary gear when it comes to stats. For instance, if you were to max out a piece of tier 5 legendary armor in Edge of Fate, you'd reach 90 stats total. And that's not even including the tuning slots, which can bring you up to 93 in total. That's 15 stats we're missing out on simply because our exotics weren't updated with everything else. Now, granted, many of our builds, if not all of them, revolve around our exotic armor piece. So of course we're going to be using it, but it does bring the question up why Bungie just doesn't allow us to earn tier 5 exotics. Now, pulled from the TWAB, Bungie gave their explanation and their reasoning as to why we are not getting tier 5 exotics. Long term, we hope to eventually add support for exotics to access the benefits of higher tiers using a dedicated system that reflects their nature as a unique centerpiece in your builds. Although the system won't be ready for the Year of Prophecy, we wanted to make sure that exotic armor could benefit from armor archetypes and the reworked masterworking system. So Bungie themselves acknowledges that exotics should be better, but that they're going to need an entire year to bring this system into the live game. It's not like this change is going to be something we get in Renegades. Now, there could be some speculation to why it is they're waiting this long. Part of me wonders if Bungie's trying to go like line by line, similar to what they did with exotic class items, and give us stat distributions within its archetypes that make sense for that exotic. And if that is the case, I do respect the ambition, but man, it's going to leave a big void in our builds for an entire year. The other question is, could it be because Bungie is going to be fundamentally changing how exotics work in Destiny? Now, based on some of the footage we've already seen, Bungie can give exotics extra stats in line with tier 5 gear. And it's also somewhat obvious that if we were simply getting tier 5 exotics, Bungie could easily ship that in Ashen Iron or even in Renegades. The system is already there. It just simply needs to be implemented, which leads me to believe that whatever change the devs are planning has to be big enough to warrant an entire year of planning, development, and testing. As we have seen from what's coming in Edge of Fate, we have huge systematic changes coming to the game. Like, whatever way you may feel about Edge of Fate or its story or its content, we'll see how that plays out. But again, core changes. This is the biggest shift in Destiny that we have ever had, really, since we went from Destiny 1 to Destiny 2. This is one of those situations where I wish Bungie would show us a little bit of something, a little tease, if you will. Kind of like the vault situation. We know we're not getting a vault increase inside of Edge of Fate, but at the same time, Bungie has stated that there's going to be some sort of vault rework in Renegades, but Bungie has not shown literally anything about that. And in my opinion, if they would just show even the smallest screenshot, they would get so many brownie points and goodwill with the community. Right now, guys, we really don't know what direction they're going with for exotics. Maybe it is just simply upgrading it to Armor 3.0 and they call it a day. Whatever it is, my hope is that with this future update, which will be a whole year from now, Bungie not only addresses the problem of exotic stat rolls in its tiers, but also its exotic rarity. If you've been playing Destiny for the past year, or really just the past couple years, you've probably noticed that the exotic genie has been out of the bottle for quite some time, leading to a lack of rarity, which is a shame considering exotics are supposed to be the rarest items in all of Destiny. I've said it for a long time, Bungie needs to give us some ways to amp our exotics exotics beyond just its current form. And I'm not necessarily saying an entirely new rarity, but even if it was something from like Path of Exile, where you could apply a Val Orb to an exotic and corrupt it, yes, there's that chance that you completely ruin your exotic. You brick it, if you will. But imagine a world in which you could apply corruption orbs or some sort of currency to your exotic, and it literally gives it new functionality. For hunters and stompies, imagine not only the ability to have increased sprint speed and slide distance, but also just flat out gives you an extra jump. Or for my warlocks and sunbracers, when you land a melee kill, you're granted not just unlimited solar grenades, but you can throw out 2 grenades at once every time you throw a single grenade. For titans, can you imagine corrupting your Lordly Splendor helmets? And instead of it saying, while you have a solar super equipped, casting your barricade or becoming critically wounded with full class ability energy creates a sunspot at your location. Imagine if it was any super equipped. Look, these are just some examples, and one thing I really loved about Path of Exile was the pure randomness to what corruption and Val Orbs brought to the table. And for my PvP players that are sitting there saying, Cross, that sounds busted, that would break PvP. I know I've stated in the past, what if you could corrupt One Eye Mask and give it its OG tracking capabilities? Listen, just have a playlist inside of Crucible that allows for corrupted exotics, and maybe let it happen on occasional weekends of Trials of Osiris. I'm just saying, guys, this is the kind of power fantasy that I love. And for the longest time now, I just really haven't felt excited about exotic Ingrams. Nothing about that makes me jump for joy when I see it. Whereas if you're a Destiny 1 player, you know what it was like to get an exotic back in the day. I still remember my brother calling me because Hawkmoon dropped on him. And dude, I was so mad. I was like, dude, you don't even hardly play this game. You get on for like 2 Crucible games every other day, and somehow Bungie gives you the Hawkmoon instead of me. But dude, that's just how it was. The point is I want Bungie, if they're gonna take an entire year here, I want them to cook, man. I hate that we're not getting tier 5 exotic armor pieces right now. That hurts. And I hope after waiting an entire year, it's not just gonna be, hey, here's your actual stat distributions, and they call it a day. Rarity is going to have to be addressed alongside however way exotics are supposed to be fitting into Armor 3.0. Now, currently right now, you may be wondering, Cross, what's the play? How can I be best prepared for Edge of Fate? Well, similar to Legendary Armor, because the new Armor 3.0 system is archetype based, you should try to target farm the categories you cannot earn once Edge of Fate launches. For example, the 2 stats on everyone's mind right now are weapons and super. Both of these will be crucial when it comes to maxing out DPS, especially for the day 1 raid. Now, as it stands, there is no archetype that allows you to roll these 2 as a primary and a secondary stats. But right now, both of these stats fall into different pools, meaning you could roll 30 in each category and technically have better armor than even tier 5. Now, that is strictly speaking in terms of spiked stats. Generally speaking, Edge of Fate armor will better pad your lowest stats, but I know many of us are going to be farming and currently farming for those high mobility, high intellect pieces for that increase in weapon and super damage for the day 1 raid. That literally can be the difference maker between clearing a damage check or felling the encounter. Now, keep in mind, no one should have tier 5 armor on raid day. So if you're thinking, Cross, why should I prep even now when I can get tier 5? Good luck. It's a good chance many of us won't have tier 5 until well after the raid. Now again, none of you even have to worry about farming stats if doing contest mode is not even something you want to do. I'm just saying for the rest of us and my squad specifically, that's what we're doing. Now, another thing that Bungie is doing is that they're going to be offering exotic archetype focusing for up to 20 exotics once Edge of Fate launches. Pull from last week's TWAB. To make this transition a little easier, Edit1 will be offering 20 free focused exotic armors per account to anyone who has tower access prior to the release of the Edge of Fate. This special focusing will be available throughout the Year of Prophecy and will allow you to focus any non-class item exotic from the Final Shape or before with an archetype of your choice, as long as you have it unlocked in collections. So essentially here, guys, you will have the ability to focus 20 exotic armor pieces as long as you have access to the tower prior to the release and have it unlocked in your collections. But again, you are locked to specific archetypes. So if you're looking for a specific stat distribution right now, then you need to go focus it at the Cryptarch for whatever your favorite exotics are going into this next expansion. And the good thing is you can select your ghost mod that will weight certain stats. And if you need more exotics, you can either farm them in lost sectors, or you can even pick them up from the season pass. And keep in mind, you can even take advantage of the season pass expansion where you can go back to previous season passes and grab old exotic Ingrams. Again, we'll have a link to that down below. Now, as far as the new exotics that are coming with Edge of Fate, these new exotics are only available available via completion of the Edge of Fate Legendary campaign, which means there is nothing holding you back from spending those exotic Ingrams right now. I know I was turning some of mine in yesterday and you guys were losing it. It's fine, fellas. We're gonna be getting the new exotics via the campaign. And in my opinion, now is the time to use them to get the stats that you want. Without a doubt though, guys, not getting tier 5 exotic armor pieces right now is a bummer. And I would say, Bungie, if there's any type of hint we can get from you guys on what the future of exotic pieces are, we would love to know. Even if it is a year out, I would be way more gracious and way more accepting of that year-long wait if I knew what was on the other end of that, or even just had a small hint of what's on the other side. But hey man, maybe it's just me. Perhaps some of you are okay with tier 2 exotic armor pieces. And if that's the case, I'll shut up now. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.